Captain Ashley Morgan's boots echoed through the abandoned hangar of Gateway Stations, Sector 7, each step stirring up clouds of metallic dust that danced in the dim emergency lighting. Above her, the experimental vessel Basilisk loomed like a forgotten giant, its obsidian hull absorbing what little light reached it. Most saw an embarrassing failure, a $500,000,000 mistake better left to rust. Morgan saw salvation. "Ma'am, this section is scheduled for decommissioning," a young maintenance worker called out, hurrying toward her with a tablet in hand. "The containment field goes down in 48 hours. Morgan turned, her weathered face breaking into a knowing smile. "Then I'd better work fast, hadn't I?" She pulled up her credentials on her wrist display, watching the worker's eyes widen as he read her clearance level. Dr. Morgan, the quantum physicist. His tablet nearly slipped from his fingers. "I thought you were teaching at MIT, consulting for NASA, court-martialed for unauthorized weapons testing." She shrugged. "All of the above. Now, I need access to the Basilisk's core systems." The worker hesitated, then nodded. "It's your career, ma'am." As he retreated, Morgan approached the ship's main access ramp. Her hand traced the hull's unique geometric patterns, not decorative, as most assumed, but a complex array of quantum field stabilizers, the same design that had gotten her laughed out of the Defense Force's Advanced Projects Division 3 years ago. Inside, the ship still smelled of ozone and burned circuits from its catastrophic test flight. Morgan made her way to the bridge, her steps short despite the darkness. She'd memorized these corridors from the original blueprints, back when the Basilisk was just a theory on her tablet. The bridge's main console sprang to life at her touch, years of dust cascading from its holographic displays. Warning messages crowded the air around her. Quantum core. Unstable. Reality anchor. Compromised. Probability matrix. Critical failure. Morgan grinned. They were all exactly what she'd expected to see. Computer. Access test flight data. Authorization Morgan 7 Delta 9. The air filled with scrolling data streams, sensor readings from the Basilisk's only attempted flight. To the original engineers, it had seemed like random chaos, a complete system failure that nearly ripped the ship apart. But Morgan saw the pattern hidden in the noise. She pulled a small quantum processor from her jacket, officially decommissioned, unofficially borrowed from her old lab. As she plugged it into the console, new calculations sprang to life, confirming what she'd suspected for years. The Basilisk hadn't failed. It had succeeded too well. A distant explosion rocked the station. Morgan steadied herself against the console as the emergency lights flashed red. Over the station's comm system, a calm voice announced, "Attention all personnel. Zarkak's forces have been detected in the Proxima Centauri system. This is not a drill. Please proceed to your designated evacuation points." Through the bridge's viewport, Morgan watched as streaks of light signaled military vessels jumping to respond. The Terran Defense Force's finest ships, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent. And each one, she knew, completely inadequate against what was coming. The Zarkaks weren't just attacking human colonies anymore. Their strikes were becoming bolder, their ships appearing and disappearing with impossible speed. Conventional weapons and tactics wouldn't be enough to stop them. Morgan pulled up the station's maintenance schedule on a secondary display. 48 hours until they shut down this sector's containment field. 48 hours to convince a crew to join her, restart a failed experimental drive, and turn this dead ship into humanity's last hope. She reached out and pressed her palm against the main viewport, staring up at the distant stars where the Zarkaks waited. "They all think you're impossible," she whispered to the ship around her. "But they don't understand what impossible really means. Not like we do." Behind her, the quantum processor's calculations continued to scroll, each line confirming her theory. The Basilisk's drive didn't just fold space, it folded probability itself. In the right hands, with the right understanding, it could make one ship appear to be many, could let a single vessel strike from multiple points in spacetime simultaneously. All she needed now was a crew crazy enough to help her prove it. You want me to what? Jake Martinez looked up from the engine he was rebuilding in his makeshift workshop on Luna's dark side. Hydraulic fluid dripped from his hands, adding to the constellation of stains on his overalls. Morgan leaned against a workbench, careful to avoid the scattered tools and prototype parts. I want you to help me resurrect an experimental quantum fold drive that everyone else thinks is impossible. The one that nearly turned Gateway Station into a quantum singularity. Jake wiped his hands on a rag that might have been clean once, months ago. That's some real desperate thinking, Captain, says the man who rewired a destroyer's fusion core mid-battle. That was different. The pirates had us cornered, and you saved 300 lives by doing something impossible. Morgan tossed him a data chip. Then they court-martialed you for it. Jake caught the chip one-handed, slotting it into his workshop's ancient holographic projector. His eyes widened as the basilisk schematics filled the air around them. These quantum field configurations, they're not trying to fold space the normal way. No, they're not. Morgan smiled. That's why everyone thinks it failed. Jake's fingers traced the holographic engine design, his expression shifting from skepticism to fascination. You'd need one hell of a pilot to handle the quantum feedback. Already got one in mind. Diana Ghostwalker sat in her usual corner of the Olympus bar, watching ships dock through the reinforced windows of Mars's highest drinking establishment. Her pilot's license might be revoked, but she could still spot a ship's make and model at a glance. They say you pulled a crazy Ivan at light speed, Morgan said, sliding into the seat across from her, inside Jupiter's gravity well. They say a lot of things. Diana didn't look away from the window. Most of them end with suicidal or reckless. I say you're the only pilot who might be able to handle my ship. That got Diana's attention. Her cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Morgan. You don't have a ship. You've been grounded since the quantum drive project failed. Morgan placed a worn credit chip on the table. 40 million credits, my entire life savings, ready to transfer, enough to buy your own ship. But I'm offering you something better. A chance to fly something that breaks all the rules. Diana's organic eye narrowed. The basilisk. You actually got it running. Not yet. That's where our next recruit comes in. Marcus Chen's laboratory occupied a sub-basement of Europa Station, as far from oversight as one could get in the solar system. The air hummed with the sound of quantum processors and smelled of burnt coffee. Your AI research, Morgan said, studying the complex neural patterns floating in the lab's holotank. It's not about making them more efficient, is it? Marcus froze, his hand halfway to the emergency shutdown switch. How did you get in here? The same way you got those banned quantum processors. Through channels that don't officially exist. Morgan gestured at the neural patterns. You're trying to teach them to dream. They already dream. Marcus's voice softened. They just need help understanding what dreams are. And the Defense Forge shut you down because they're afraid of what that means. Morgan stepped closer to the holotank. I need someone who understands quantum consciousness. Someone who can help merge an eye with a drive system that exists in multiple realities at once. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be beyond anything we could generate. Morgan pulled up the basilisk's specs. Unless we had a way to exist in multiple probability states simultaneously, drawing power from parallel realities. Marcus stared at the specifications, his coffee forgotten. If this works, my God, do you know what this could mean for AI development? I know we have less than 36 hours before the basilisk gets scrapped. And I know the Zarkaks are coming with a fleet that our conventional weapons can't stop. Around them, the quantum processors hummed a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat, or a countdown. When do we start? Marcus asked. Morgan checked her watch. Now, the basilisk's waiting. And we've got a lot of impossible things to do. Hour 32 of their 36-hour deadline found Captain Morgan surrounded by holographic equations that spiraled through the basilisk's bridge like mathematical constellations. Empty coffee containers littered the console, testament to her 3-day work binge. She hadn't slept since bringing the crew aboard. "You're going to fry your brain if you keep this up," Jake called from beneath a panel of quantum circuitry. Sparks cascaded around him as he reconnected the ship's neural pathways. Morgan waved away a set of failed calculations. "The answer's here. We're just looking at it wrong." She pulled up the original test flight data again, watching the cascade of system failures that had branded the basilisk a disaster. Diana lounged in the pilot's seat, her cybernetic eye recording every detail of the ship's unique control interface. "Tell me again why the original test went sideways." "Because," Marcus answered from his makeshift AI lab in the corner, "they tried to make it behave like a normal quantum drive. Like forcing a square peg through a round hole." Morgan froze, her tired mind latching onto those words. Square peg, round hole. She swept aside the current equations and began drawing new ones in the air. "We've been thinking about this backwards." Her fingers flew through the holographic interface, mathematical symbols arranging themselves in patterns that seemed to twist in impossible ways. The others gathered around, watching as their captain rewrote physics. "Normal quantum drives create a single fold in spacetime," Morgan explained, her voice gaining strength. "They'd punch through that fold like a needle through fabric. Clean, precise, predictable. But inefficient," Jake added, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You lose energy maintaining the fold stability." "Exactly." Morgan highlighted a section of the basilisk's drive geometry. "This ship doesn't try to maintain stability. It embraces instability. Instead of one clean fold, it creates a cascade," Marcus whispered, staring at the equations. "Like dropping a stone in a pond, but the ripples move through probability instead of water." Diana leaned forward, her organic eyes squinting at the math. "You're saying this ship doesn't fold space. It sort of splashes through it." "Better than that." Morgan's grin was fierce in the holographic light. "It exists in multiple probability states simultaneously. We're not trying to punch through space-time. We're trying to surf it." Jake shook his head in wonder. The original engineers must have thought the feedback readings were system failures. Because their instruments were designed to measure normal space-time distortions. Morgan pulled up the ship's primary control algorithms. "We don't need to suppress the quantum feedback. We need to amplify it, direct it." "Marcus, can your eye handle parallel probability streams?" The AI specialist was already deep in his own calculations. "If we partition the quantum consciousness correctly, yes, it could work." The AI wouldn't just pilot the ship, it would help coordinate its multiple states of existence. "Which means I'd be flying multiple versions of the ship at once," Diana said, her cybernetic eye whirring with excitement. "Hell yes." Warning klaxons shattered the moment. The station's AI announced, "Attention all personnel. Zarkak's forces have breached the Kuiper Belt defense line. All non-essential personnel proceed to emergency shelters." Morgan checked the countdown timer. 4 hours until the containment field collapsed. 4 hours to finish rebuilding the ship and prove her theory, or watch their last hope turn to space debris. "Jake, finish those neural pathways." "Diana, run every simulation you can on the new flight dynamics." "Marcus, get your eye ready for quantum consciousness integration." She turned back to her equations, to the mathematical proof that could save humanity. The Terran Science Council called this fantasist nonsense. Let's show them what impossible really means. The crew scattered to their tasks, each carrying a piece of Morgan's revolutionary insight. Above them, the basilisk's quantum core hummed to life for the first time in years, its sound unlike any engine humanity had built before. Not the steady roar of conventional drives, but a strange, shifting melody, like reality itself learning to sing a new song. "All systems are as ready as they'll ever be," Jake reported from the engineering station, his voice tight with tension. "Quantum core is stable. Well, unstable in exactly the way we want it to be." Captain Morgan stood behind Diana's pilot chair, watching Gateway Station's containment field shimmer around them. They had 30 minutes left before it would collapse. 30 minutes to prove everyone wrong. "Marcus, how's our AI integration?" Morgan asked, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Quantum consciousness is online and adapting." Marcus's fingers danced across his console. "She's processing probability streams faster than expected. I think she's enjoying it." Diana's cybernetic eye whirred as she interfaced with the ship's controls. "The handling's like nothing I've ever felt. It's like the ship's already moving, even though we're stationary." "Because we're not entirely stationary," Morgan explained. "We're existing across multiple probability states, ready for a short jump." The crew exchanged glances. This was it, the moment that would either revolutionize space travel or add their names to the long list of those who died chasing impossible dreams. "Target locked," Diana announced. 0.3 light years, just past the Kuiper Belt. "Should be a nice, easy test." The universe exploded. Reality twisted around them like a kaleidoscope shattering. Morgan felt herself existing in 3 places at once, each version of her experiencing a different quantum state of the ship. Through the viewport, she saw stars streak past in impossible patterns, space itself folding and unfolding like origami in the hands of a mad god. "Power spike," Jake shouted, his voice echoing strangely, as if coming from multiple versions of himself. "The quantum cascade is exceeding all predicted parameters." "Diana, hold her steady," Morgan ordered, though the words felt strange in her multiple mouths. "I'm trying." Diana's organic eye was squeezed shut, while her cybernetic one flashed rapidly. "But we're not just jumping to one place, we're jumping to every possible version of that place." Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. "The AI's adapting. She's learning to surf the probability waves." "Diana, let her help you." The ship's quantum consciousness merged with Diana's neural interface. Suddenly, the chaos began to make sense. Morgan watched in awe as reality settled into distinct layers, like pages in a book viewed all at once. We're everywhere," Jake whispered. He wasn't exaggerating. The basilisk had jumped not just past the Kuiper Belt, but to 3 different points in space simultaneously. Through the viewport, Morgan could see the rings of Saturn, the red storms of Jupiter, and the distant glow of Alpha Centauri, all at once. "How is this possible?" Diana breathed, her hands steady on controls that operated across multiple realities. "The quantum drive isn't fighting the probability cascade," Morgan explained, watching her theory come to life. "It's embracing it. We're not just moving through space. We're moving through every possible version of space." Warning alerts flashed across every console. "Reality anchor failing," Jake reported. "We're going to tear apart if we stay like this." "Diana, bring us home," Morgan ordered. Marcus helped the AI calculate the convergence point. The universe twisted again, reality snapping back like a rubber band. The basilisk reappeared at Gateway Station, exactly where they'd started, and exactly 1 minute after they'd left. Silence fell across the bridge, broken only by the hum of the quantum core powering down. Did we just? Jake couldn't finish the sentence. Morgan pulled up the sensor logs, her hands shaking with excitement. 3 simultaneous positions, spanning over 4 light years of space. We didn't just break the laws of physics, we rewrote them. "Captain," Marcus called out, his voice urgent. During the jump, the AI picked up something. Long-range quantum echoes, the Zarkax fleet. It's bigger than anyone thought. And they're not just coming to raid colonies anymore. Diana turned in her chair, her mismatched eyes serious. They're coming to end humanity. Morgan looked at her crew, the rejects, the misfits, the dreamers who'd just changed everything. Then it's a good thing we have a ship that can be everywhere at once, Because we're about to show them what impossible really means. Absolutely not. Admiral Harrison's hologram towered over the Terran Defense Force Command Center, his face flushed with anger. You expect me to mobilize the entire fleet based on sensor readings from an illegal test flight of a failed prototype? Captain Morgan stood her ground, surrounded by the floating holographic evidence gathered during the Basilisk's quantum jump. The Zarkax aren't just raiding anymore. They're gathering a force large enough to steamroll every human colony from here to Proxima Centauri. Captain Morgan. Harrison's voice dripped with condescension. Your reputation for creative interpretation of physics is well known, but this is beyond. Show him. Morgan nodded to Marcus. The AI specialist uploaded a new data stream. The command center filled with quantum echoes captured during their jump. Shadows of massive fleet movements, weapon signatures that dwarfed anything humanity had encountered before. These readings are impossible, one of the junior analysts muttered. That's funny, Diana called from where she leaned against the wall. People keep using that word around us. Jake stepped forward, pointing to specific energy patterns in the data. The quantum resonance signatures don't lie. We track their fleet movements across multiple probability states. They're gathering at these coordinates, forming the largest armada we've ever detected. Harrison waved his hand dismissively. Theoretical readings from an experimental drive that already failed its official tests. You expect me to listen. Morgan's voice cut through the room like a laser. Yes, I expect the man responsible for Earth's defense to listen when someone shows him evidence of an incoming apocalypse, even if that evidence comes from people you'd rather ignore. The Admiral's hologram flickered as he leaned forward. Watch yourself, Captain. Your commission was reinstated on a provisional basis only. I can have it revoked with a single call. Go ahead. Morgan uploaded one final data packet. But first, explain why the Zarkax energy signatures we detected match exactly with the pattern of colonial massacres over the past 6 months. Colonies that were supposed to be safe behind our impenetrable defense lines. A heavy silence fell over the command center. The junior analysts looked at each other nervously, then back at their screens. Get out. Harrison's voice was deadly quiet. Get your illegal ship and your band of rejects out of my command center before I have you all arrested for spreading panic. Morgan looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each analyst in turn. When the Zarkax come, and they will come, remember this moment. Remember that someone tried to warn you. Outside the command center, her crew waited in tense silence. Well, that went about as well as expected, Diana muttered. What now, Captain? Marcus asked, his tablet still streaming data from the Basilisk's quantum consciousness. Morgan's smile was grim. Now we do what we do best, the impossible. Jake, how long will it take to upgrade the weapon systems to handle quantum targeting? With the new equations, maybe 48 hours. But we'll need specialized materials that already acquired them. Diana interrupted with a wink. Amazing what people will sell when they think you're crazy. Marcus, can the AI handle combat calculations across multiple probability states? The scientist nodded. She's been running simulations since our test flight. Her combat predictions are creative. Good. Morgan looked out the viewport at the distant stars where the Zarkax gathered. Because if Earth won't listen, we'll have to protect the outer colonies ourselves. Plot a course for the Nueva Esperanza colony. They're likely to be the first target, and their governor owes me a favor. You mean she actually believes in impossible things? Jake asked as they headed for the Basilisk's docking bay. She believes in evidence, Morgan corrected. And right now, we're the only ones with proof of what's coming. Earth may not want to hear it, but the colonies will. And when the Zarkax arrive, they'll find more than they bargained for. Diana finished, her cybernetic eye glowing with anticipation. Much more, Morgan agreed. Because sometimes the best defense isn't a wall of battleships. Sometimes it's a single ship that can be everywhere at once, crewed by people crazy enough to make it work. Nueva Esperanza's orbital platforms blazed with warning lights as the first wave of Zarkak's warships emerged from hyperspace. Their crystalline hulls caught the light of the colony's twin suns, turning space into a deadly diamond storm. Counting 37 capital ships, Diana reported from the Basilisk's pilot seat. Make that 38. No, 40. They just keep coming. Captain Morgan stood at the tactical display, watching the Zarkak's fleet spread out in their signature attack formation. Status of the colonial defense grid. Online and ready. Jake answered from engineering. Governor Rodriguez actually listened. They've upgraded everything according to our specs. Marcus. The AI specialist's fingers danced across his console. Quantum consciousness is primed. She's already calculating probable attack vectors across multiple reality states. Morgan nodded, her expression fierce. Time to show them why they should have believed us. Diana, initiate quantum fold sequence. Reality twisted as the Basilisk activated its drive. The ship existed suddenly, in 3 places at once, appearing simultaneously at key points around the colony's defense perimeter. Through the viewport, Morgan could see 3 different angles of the approaching Zarkak's fleet. Their sensors are going crazy, Marcus reported with a grin. They can't figure out if we're real or some kind of malfunction. The first Zarkak's destroyer opened fire, its plasma cannons lighting up space, but the Basilisk was already somewhere else, or rather, everywhere else. Diana's hands flew across the controls as she coordinated with the ship's AI, managing multiple quantum states with impossible precision. Weapons hot, Jake called out. Quantum targeting matrix is stable, mostly stable, stable enough. Fire. The Basilisk's guns spoke across multiple realities. Each quantum state of the ship targeted a different enemy vessel, their shots appearing to come from everywhere at once. 2 Zarkak's destroyers erupted in crystalline explosions before their commanders could even register what was happening. Colonial defense grid is engaging, Marcus reported. Our targeting data is giving them perfect shots through the Zarkak's shield frequencies. Through the quantum split viewport, Morgan watched the battle unfold from 3 different angles. The Zarkak's fleet, accustomed to overwhelming their opponents with superior numbers, found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't properly track or target. They're trying to adapt, Diana warned. Changing shield frequencies, attempting to predict our quantum shifts. That's what we wanted. Morgan's smile was predatory. Jake, initiate probability cascade. The engineer slammed his hand down on a specially modified control panel. The Basilisk's quantum drive hummed as it pushed beyond its previous limits, splitting the ship not just into 3 states, but 5, 7, 11. In normal space, the Zarkak's fleet found themselves surrounded by what appeared to be a ghost armada. Each ship a different quantum state of the Basilisk, each one firing from a different angle through their suddenly useless shields. Their formation is breaking. Marcus shouted as more crystalline ships shattered under the assault. They've never seen anything like this. No one has, Morgan replied. Diana, push them back from the colony. Show them what happens when they underestimate human ingenuity. The pilot laughed as she orchestrated their quantum dance, the Basilisk's multiple states herding the mighty Zarkak's fleet away from Nueva Esperanza like a sheepdog corralling confused sheep. Ships that had terrorized human space for years turned and fled, their perfect formation dissolved into chaos. As the last Zarkak's vessel jumped away, the Basilisk's quantum states collapsed back into one. Warning lights flashed across every console. Drives pretty much cooked, Jake reported, already pulling up damage assessments. We pushed it way beyond the safety margins. But it worked. Morgan stared at the tactical display, where the debris of destroyed Zarkak's ships drifted like dying stars. For the first time since they appeared, we've shown them that they can be beaten. Captain, Marcus called out, his voice urgent. Long-range quantum sensors are picking up something. The main Zarkak's fleet, this was just their advance force. The real Armada is still coming. How many ships? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. He looked up, his face pale. They're headed straight for Earth. Morgan looked at her crew, exhausted, exhilarated, and already ready for more. Then we got work to do. Because we just proved impossible is what humans do best. There's something wrong with these equations. Captain Morgan stood in the Basilisk's makeshift lab, surrounded by holographic data stripped from the captured Zarkak's computer cores. Debris from their victory at Nueva Esperanza had proved unexpectedly valuable. Jake looked up from where he was repairing the quantum drive's burnt-out circuits. Wrong how? Their tech is centuries ahead of ours. That's just it. Morgan highlighted a section of alien code. Look at how they handle quantum field interactions. It's unnecessarily complex, like they're forcing something to work through brute force rather than understanding. Marcus pushed away from his console, rubbing his tired eyes. The AI's been saying something similar. She keeps finding redundancies in their quantum calculations that don't make sense. Diana lounged in the doorway, her cybernetic eye scanning the alien mathematics. Could be why their ships feel so rigid. When I'm quantum jumping the basilisk, it's like dancing. Their ships move like they're walking through concrete. Morgan's fingers flew through the holographic equations, rearranging symbols in ways that made Jake's head hurt. They're treating quantum mechanics like classical physics. They've built their entire civilization on a fundamental misunderstanding of how reality works. But their tech still works, Jake pointed out. They're still kicking our butts across the galaxy. A flawed engine can still run, Morgan replied. It just wastes energy. Their quantum drives are like using a sledgehammer to drive in a nail, effective, but horrifically inefficient. Marcus straightened suddenly. The AI just found something in their tactical databases. Their entire targeting system is based on predicting standard space-time trajectories. They literally can't process multiple quantum states simultaneously. That's why they couldn't handle us at Nueva Esperanza, Diana realized. We weren't just outmaneuvering them. We were operating on principles their technology can't recognize. Morgan nodded, excitement building in her voice. Their ships are powerful because they brute force their way through quantum mechanics. But the Basilisk, we're swimming with the current instead of against it. The ship's quantum consciousness displayed a new set of calculations showing the energy differentials between Zarkak's technology and the Basilisk's systems. Look at these efficiency ratios, Jake whistled. We're operating at quantum coherence levels their engineers probably think are impossible. No wonder they couldn't track us properly. But the main fleet is still coming, Diana reminded them. 10,000 ships, minimum. Even with our efficiency advantage, those are ugly odds. Morgan's smile was fierce. Unless we use their own ignorance against them. Marcus, can you help the AI model what would happen if we pushed our quantum drive to maximum probability dispersion? The scientist's fingers flew across his console. The holographic display filled with cascading possibilities, showing the basilisk existing across dozens of quantum states simultaneously. The power requirements would be astronomical, Jake warned. We'd have to rebuild half the drive systems just to handle the load. But it would work, Marcus breathed, staring at the projections. The Zarkaks wouldn't just be unable to track us. Their sensors would overload trying to process that many simultaneous quantum states. We could shut down their targeting systems completely. How long to make the modifications? Morgan asked. Jake studied the engineering requirements. 18 hours, maybe 20. But Captain, even if this works, it's a one-way trip. The drive won't survive that kind of strain. Morgan looked at her crew, the rejects and dreamers who'd already changed the course of the war. Earth's got less than 48 hours before the Zarkaks arrive. We got one ship that can save humanity, but only if we're willing to push it beyond its limits. Beyond impossible, you mean? Diana grinned. That's kind of our specialty. Marcus, help the AI refine those quantum calculations. Jake, start the drive modifications. Diana, plot the most efficient course to Earth. Morgan turned back to the captured Zarkax data, to the proof that humanity's greatest weakness, their willingness to question everything, had become their greatest strength. The Zarkax think they're invincible because they've never met anyone who truly understands quantum mechanics, she said softly. Time to show them what real physics can do. Earth hung like a blue jewel in the viewport as the Zarkax Armada emerged from hyperspace. 10,000 crystalline warships blotted out the stars, their formation spreading across the orbital plane like a net of diamond razors. "Well," Diana said from the pilot's seat, "they certainly brought enough ships." Captain Morgan stood at the Basilisk's tactical station, watching the enemy fleets approach. "Status report." "Drive modifications complete," Jake called from engineering. "Probability cascade amplifiers are online. Fair warning, we'll get one shot at this before the whole system burns out." "Quantum consciousness is fully integrated," Marcus added. "The AI says she's ready. She also says, goodbye. She knows this is a one-way trip." Morgan nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "Diana, take us in. Time to show them what impossible really means." The Basilisk accelerated toward the Zarkax fleet. On Earth below, Admiral Harrison's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain Morgan, fall back immediately. That's a direct order." "Sorry, Admiral." Morgan allowed herself a small smile. "But sometimes the best defense is an impossible offense. All hands, initiate maximum probability cascade." Reality shattered. The Basilisk didn't just split into multiple quantum states, it exploded across probability itself. One ship became 10, became 50, became 100, each version existing simultaneously in its own slice of quantum reality. Through the fractured viewport, Morgan watched space twist like a kaleidoscope as Diana piloted them through dimensions that shouldn't exist. "Zarkax fleet is responding," Marcus reported, his voice echoing across quantum states. "Their sensors are. They're overloading. They can't process this many simultaneous probability variations." The enemy fleet's perfect formation dissolved into chaos as their targeting systems crashed, unable to handle the quantum impossibility before them. Their own advanced technology, built on flawed understanding, became their greatest weakness. "Weapons free," Morgan ordered. "Hit them from every reality at once." The Basilisk's guns spoke with the voice of quantum mechanics itself. Each probability state targeted a different enemy vessel, striking through shields that couldn't adapt to attacks coming from multiple quantum realities simultaneously. Crystalline ships shattered like frozen tears across space. "Their flagship is trying to coordinate a response," Diana reported, her cybernetic eye flickering as she managed their quantum dance. "They're attempting to calculate our true position." "Show them the truth," Morgan commanded. "All realities at once." Jake's modified quantum drive screamed as they pushed it beyond its limits. The Basilisk existed across 200 quantum states simultaneously, each one firing, each one striking, each one proving that humanity's understanding of physics had surpassed their would-be conquerors. The mighty Zarkax Armada, terror of 1,000 worlds, found itself being systematically dismantled by what appeared to be a ghost fleet, but was actually a single ship crewed by those who dared to embrace the true nature of quantum reality. "Drives going critical," Jake shouted over the sound of reality tearing itself apart. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before total cascade failure." "Target their command ships," Morgan ordered. "Every probability state, everything we've got left. Show them what happens when they underestimate human ingenuity." The Basilisk's final attack was beautiful in its impossibility. 200 quantum states struck simultaneously, their weapons fire weaving a web of destruction through the heart of the Zarkax fleet. Command ships exploded in crystalline fury, their deaths rippling across space like breaking glass. As the quantum drive began its final collapse, Diana pulled them into one last maneuver. The Basilisk's probability states spiraled together, each reality merging back into one as they dove through the enemy formation. Behind them, The greatest fleet ever assembled fell into chaos, their rigid tactics useless against an enemy that rewrote the rules of reality itself. Earth Defense Command. Morgan transmitted as their quantum states collapsed for the final time. The Zarkak's fleet is in disarray. Their command structure is destroyed. Coordinate with the colonial forces we warned. You know, the ones who actually believed us. And finish this. She looked at her crew, the rejects, the dreamers, the ones who dared to imagine impossible things, as their burning ship limped toward home. Not bad for a failed prototype and a bunch of washouts. Diana grinned. Failed prototype. Morgan watched the remaining Zarkak ships flee in panic. No, this ship was exactly what we believed it could be. Proof that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't superior technology. It's superior understanding. Marcus finished. As Earth's defense fleet moved to mop up the scattered enemy vessels, the Basilisk's quantum core finally went dark. But it didn't matter anymore. They had shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their ships. It was their willingness to believe in impossible things, and then make them possible.